Welcome to VUX World. I'm your host, Kane Sims, as always, and I need to tell you about the Chatbot Summit in Edinburgh. The European Chatbot Conference is going to be in March on the 15th and 16th, and VUX World are doing a day on the second day at the Chatbot Summit in Edinburgh. We're going to have brands like Vodafone, Love Holidays, Decathlon, a whole bunch of brands sharing their experiences of launching and developing and improving conversational AI applications in the enterprise, lessons to be learned, and best practice. Is going to be absolutely fantastic. The links to that will be in the show notes. You can save 30% if you use the promo code, which I'll put in the show notes and in the podcast and on the website and all the places where you'll be listening to this podcast. Thank you for bearing with me there, Paulina. Welcome to VUX World. Thank you for joining me.
Hello everyone. Good to
How's it going?
see you. It's great. It's New Year, start of the
Yeah.
year, new resolutions. So yeah, on the optimistic outlook.
Monday was the first day that most people give up on their resolutions. Have you give up your resolutions yet, or are you still powering through?
So fortunately, there's no much. There's no much to actually follow. But I think the one which I have, I still continue for. So it's actually moving forward.
Nice. That's good. My resolution this year for January was to quit sugar, and it has been absolutely rock hard. I'm still going, I'm still maintaining, but it has been so hard. Didn't quite realize how addictive sugar was, but there you
I
go.
don't want to disappoint you, actually, if you realize that sugar is almost in everything we eat.
Yeah,
So I'm sorry for.
yeah, it is fair enough. I mean, sort of refined sugars and processed sugars. Then, so apples, I'm fine. I'll have an apple. I'll have the natural sugar from the apple. I've been having blueberry smoothies, so I've been getting some natural sugar from blueberries. But it's like refined sugars, like biscuits, cakes, pastries, chocolate, especially chocolate. Things like that is what I'm not having. Packaged food, I'm trying not to have. Natural sugars I'm fine with, but processed and refined sugars I'm trying to stay away from. Um, but yeah, all that'll happen, and I can see this already, is that at the end of January, defeating the object entirely, the big reward will be like just smashing through a bunch of chocolate and cakes or something. But yeah,
So it's only for January, right? Or
just for
entire year?
January, yeah,
Okay.
just for January, yeah. I just wanted to see if I can just get through a month and see if I can at least break that sort of dopamine addiction to sugar. Whether it works, who knows? I'll return to sugar with a slightly less overzealous mindset, perhaps, but we'll see.
Keep my
But
finger
anyway,
crossed.
yeah, keep your fingers crossed. Keep your fingers crossed, toes crossed, legs crossed, everything. It's going to be very hard. It's been so hard so far. But anyway, enough about my sugar habits. Tell me about your habits as a conversation designer at. Did you pronounce it Roche or Roche?
Rush. So
Roche. Yeah.
it's actually interesting because I still consider myself as a newbie. As well, when we met last time, I explained you that we mainly focus on our experiments. So if you have experiments, it's not like fully productive. You have lots of shortcuts, so you learn a lot. You can really nicely experiment, but it's not kind of like full life cycle and everything. So I'm still learning, but and we are building also a team around the conversation design capabilities, but it's kind of a new for us. And of course, there are some internal processes which we automated, and we have a team responsible for that. But what I am particularly talking about is actually the conversational interfaces and the conversational design for more external looking, as we call it, particularly patient facing assistants, I would say. So it's a kind
Mm,
of a new journey to me. I started 2 years ago with a bunch of experiments we had, and I will bring some to you today during this
nice.
conversation, and only continuing. So actually, starting last October, I really moved to the conversational design role, like a full time. And now on my plate, I'm having the multimodal virtual assistant for MS patient to really learn more and understand more what is the space for that technology.
Nice. Sounds good. So, could you give us a bit of kind of context of Roche in terms of, for those that may not be aware, like what Roche does and how your sort of role within it, and the scope of, because you said you're doing a lot of experiments, presumably in like the innovation or research kind of uh, division, is it, or something? Could you give us a bit of
Yeah, so
context on
Roche
the company and your division?
Roche is a pharmaceutical company, big worldwide. We are bringing really lots of advancement around the science for the diagnostics and for the medicines for patients. We are really investing a lot in research and development. And of course, with that, it came to us that we really also invest more from the technology perspective and what the technology can bring to patients. Myself and what I am doing, it's a part of the global Roche Informatics. So it's also a worldwide organization. So we are supporting whole organization from the informatics perspective and really bringing new technologies on board as well. And as a part of this big organization, we had also a smaller so-called tech experimentation team when we really wanted to experiment with the new technologies, with this really fast and quick idea how you can do this. And it really allows us to bring lots of innovative ideas and really see how we can actually continue on them.
Nice. So where did the journey start then with Roche? Where did this kind of idea for maybe a conversational interface could be a good idea here? Where did that begin?
It's difficult to say actually where if you think about a big organization, but actually in one of our discussion, it appears okay. Actually, it started with digital human. So we saw some interesting presentation thinking, okay, what could be the applicability for that? And, maybe also setting a bit of the context around the healthcare. So there are lots of information available, but like simplifying and bringing them, we are really aging as a population, right? So it means that more people will need help from the healthcare professional worldwide. Additionally, we know, and actually COVID pandemic revealed it so much, that there are really shortfalls for healthcare workers. And the WHO, so World Health Organization, also predicts that it will be even more. So if you think like from only that perspective, uh, then you see that actually conversational interfaces are a good place for automations, right? So you can really put some interfaces which can really help and can really facilitate somehow the interaction between the doctor, the nurse, and patients actually. And actually it has happened during COVID. So COVID is like the digital ally for the digital transformation also in the healthcare. In lots of area, actually, chatbots started, the transactional chatbot started to somehow help doing this connection and facilitate some stuff. So this is like from the helicopter view, I would say, perspective. So the needs. But also what we know, because we, of course, we have lots of projects, lots of interactions with patients. We know that there is also a need to have reliable and relevant information available for patient 24 per 7, meaning that with this workload which is already in a healthcare, the patients are not having sometimes a relevant support because the doctors are really busy and it's really difficult. And also the visits are very, very short one. So if you think about it, and we actually, if we were thinking about it, it was immediately for us, okay, how to support it, how to create a digital humor or kind of a gateway between the doctor and the patient who can really help with this interaction, which can be really available when it's needed, actually. So this is how it started. And the more we dig, we also learn that as humans, actually, we sometimes really struggle sharing some specific information, even with our doctors, even with our healthcare professionals. So it appears that the conversational interface might be also interesting one to really help patients, help people to disclose more and to then with this disclosure also learn more about their disease, for example.
Yeah, there's been some studies done, hasn't there, in the past, which has found that people, in some cases, prefer to speak to a sort of digital assistant for certain things. Like there was a really good one about the. Did you ever hear about Sergeant Starr?
No.
The US. So the US military introduced a bot called Sergeant Starr, and it was there to try and encourage people to basically enroll to be in the army, the US Army. And most of the time, what they do is they have offices in towns, and you've got big, sort of like strapping soldiers, really intimidated, sort of like war torn guys and girls who've kind of been through it all. And they're there and they're really intimidating, trying to get people to sign up. They're not purposefully being intimidating, but like they can be quite intimidating. And what happened, what they found is that when they launched this chatbot, people were asking the chatbot things that they wouldn't dream of asking the recruitment officers. They were asking things like, if I get put in the army, am I going to be given a gun? Like, will I need to kill people? Like, will I have to shower with other dudes and stuff like that? And they were asking questions that were just, they didn't realize that those were the needs of the people that they were speaking to, because it was intimidating to speak to, a super fit, ultra experienced soldier. And it's a lot easier to speak to basically a robot by China. Did you learn similar things in this digital human project, like in terms of people's comfort levels?
We did actually not from the digital human, but maybe on the note, I can tell you about Ellie. If you know Ellie, it's actually very similar because it was for the veterans from the, I think, Vietnam War, I believe. And not only actually Afghanistan as well. So I think it was created for the PTSD, so post-traumatic symptom disorder, for the veterans. And there was a study where really it's shown that actually when interacting with Ellie, which was just kind of an avatar of a person, they were more keen of disclose more symptoms they having. And there were two parts of this research. The one was with the face-to-face therapist, normal person, and with the faceless chatbot. And then it appears the disclosure to the chatbot really had twice more information, because the faceless chatbot was more like the privacy,
Yeah.
safety, yeah. But then they do also another part with the faceless chatbot and more like this avatar thing, so Ellie therapist. And then it appears that with Ellie they disclose twice more than to the faceless chatbot, because it was kind of creating some rapport and connection between them. So it's already showing that
Interesting.
this embodiment, although it's still virtual, and it was not like this digital human we are now seeing in this particular vendors providing them, but like simple embodiment, actually, it already somehow encouraged and built this type of connection that people were really able to disclose more. On that note, I think it was Boston Medical Center also. So they introduced chatbot to patients which have been discharged from the hospital, and they actually been using chatbot for final interview. And what they actually notice is that people actually share more information with chatbot, but with the final survey, they learned that actually it's because people were mindful about the time of the administrative work of the
Hmm.
healthcare professionals. So they didn't want to take too much time, actually. So there are different
Interesting.
motivation, but you can already see how does it work. From our experience, actually from one of experiment around the multimodal assistant, around some silent symptoms people may experience during the chronic disease. Actually, it appears that they were more keen to ask some questions about topics which were not super easy to them to speak with the healthcare professional, like some sexual problems, urinary disorders, and all this stuff. So it appears it was easier to ask these questions to the machine, actually, not feeling being judgmental around it and not have this barrier, actually.
Interesting. Do you think that's what it is predominantly, is people don't feel judged? Do you think that's what it is, or do you think there's other things going on?
I am not a professional in that area. I think I need to kind of deepen my knowledge, but I think this is exactly how it is. So that and I think it's, it's also what we will learn in upcoming years, I believe, right? Because what we think about digital humans, if we can think about, what is a digital human? In digital human is an embodiment. We speak human because we are expecting some human traits, right? So because it looks like human, it might have voice, actually, it talk to us, so we perceive it, okay, it might be like a human like conversation. And then we think, if we create similar emotions which humans have discussing and talking each other, we believe that people will also behave the same with the machines. But this is only the belief we have, because
Mm,
we don't have enough data to actually understand if it's actually the same as people behave between the, if there's the same behavior between the machine and the person as between two people, actually.
mm.
So I
Is
think
that
we need to learn, wait more, and really look for more data and see how does it actually feel.
Yeah, and is that something that you're looking at then? Is that part of this experiments with a digital human, or is
Well,
that
not yet,
not?
I would say. I think I would personally be more involved. We really now more look like, is it possible, trying to look as a desk research, so really see for some researches which has been done already. And just to be fair, there is not much. Of course, there are more and more are coming in terms of some interaction between human and machines, but not definitely between more embodied machines or embodiment like digital human. But
Mm,
what we tried to understand with a few experiments we did last year around digital humans, actually, if this emotional connection can be built on one hand, and if the technology is ready, and what does it mean that the emotional connection can be built?
mm. And what did you find then? Can an emotional connection be established, and is the technology ready?
So maybe I will take it more from the technology perspective. So so I started already. If we think about digital human, again, it's some virtual embodiment um, on top of it, and uh, on background, so behind, we have some conversational platform, because this is how it works. So
Hmm.
this is the one thing. So the assistant or the digital human will answer some question to the extent which they were somehow properly designed on one hand. And additionally, what we could expect, as majority of people, we have some voice, that also the digital human will also speak some voice. And if we think about how the conversation between people works and how we build some kind of the connection, is really how we respond to behavior the other person is having. So if you would search for empathy, if something is wrong, you would like me to most probably listening carefully, empathize, most probably not cry with you if you start to cry, but rather to provide you some support. And we really wanted to think if the technology is ready about it. So from the technology perspective, if you think what is behind, so there's lots of prominent areas from the AI space, actually. So this is like sound and video processing, CGI, text processing, sentiment analysis, natural language processing, natural language understanding. So really a lot about it. And even if I am saying this, it means that all these components needs to be somehow connected. Because now, currently on the market, there is no one single provider which is good in all these technologies together. So you really need to put together various components to really make it work. And if we think about building this emotional connection, it can go from what you say. so the text. Uh, it can go from tone of your voice, so how you are saying things, and also from how your face looks like, right? So from so the facial recognition. So that was our area of focus. So how we can analyze the text and how actually we can speak it back or type it back, depends on the situation. How we can analyze the video, so how we can process video during the streaming time, actually, not asynchronously, but in the
Mm-hmm.
moment when it's done.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, how we can really combine all of this together and how we can also grasp emotions from the voice. So we test few top platforms, cloud platforms available on the market, with some additional models around of video streaming, because for the video streaming there are mainly some custom models around. And the technology somehow support all of this component, but if you want to combine it together, this is not super easy case.
Mm.
And we are still really in the beginning of our journey. And even now, I'm not sure if you spot it, but for me, I can see your face sometimes be blurry. I don't know if it's my network connection or it's yours, but you can also feel how much it can be influenced also by other factors like internet connection, like do you have your mobile phone or other means. So in theory and a little bit in practice, it's ready, but it requires lots of effort. So the text analysis now it's relatively easy to be done, but we can also fake the text very much because we can always rethink what we want to write. We can be more polite, and if we type the text to the machine, machine will somehow do the sentiment analysis based on it. And then if we speak, the voice can be to some extent fake, but it's not easy to fake. So if we are emotional, the voice is really emotional. Sometimes you can have a poker face. So if you combine all these engines together, it might even happen that depends on the analysis based on all those three channels. You have like the contradictory idea about the emotion of someone speaking to you. And then
Mm.
how the response should be built. So I think it's a still future, but we really need to carefully observe how it is developing. And again, I am more generalist in this area, so I can imagine there are more people who can really elaborate on this specific areas. But at least we think this is something which definitely will develop further. But for now, it's really up to what is needed and what we should focus on.
Mm. So am I understanding this correctly then, which is that the digital human that you created was doing a number of things. So one, it was recognizing the user's face, for want of a better phrase, video, so that it could
Mhm.
mimic streaming the video in, so it could mimic or understand the emotional state of the user based on facial expressions and things like that, combined with speech recognition that is aiming to. Were you doing any analysis on the speech recognition, or were you just converting that to text and doing sentiment analysis on that?
Rather sentiment analysis. So we tried to use what these platforms are giving to us, and certain
Mm.
platforms gives you the some sentiment analysis with some scores, right? And based on the scores, you could actually we try to even program so somehow allow different intents to be provided, depends on that.
Mm-hmm.
From the facial recognition, we use also vendors who have some algorithms behind their own platform. So we actually rather try to combine those given from the platform
Yeah.
than create something like that.
Yeah.
But particularly something like this. But again, I would call it more like the Lego idea than like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
fully fledged fully fledged solutions, rather really check what we can do. Is it possible to do? Some platforms actually didn't allow to specific act on, so to from the digital human didn't allow for specific act for emotions from their self. You need to program in a specific moment on the conversation how actually the avatar will behave. So it was difficult, especially that we would love to have kind of response very natural in the moment, when it comes. Okay, if you actually plan for the intents and you still, okay, this intent will be triggered in the certain emotion state based on text analysis, for example, we can still program it. But this is not like as natural as possible. So there is still a place for improvement.
So could you walk us through the how you sort of once you go through this process and you're kind of assembling these pieces of technology because you're trying to create a digital human that is trying to improve the relationship between the doctor and the patient, and you want to make it so that it can recognize things like emotion, respond accordingly based on the user's emotion and stuff like that. What was the actual context of the use case? Like, how would this, if all of these experiments went really well, or even when you were testing it, what is the sort of context in how this thing does and works? Like, is it a doctor sitting there with a patient and there's digital humans listening and giving feedback? Like, how does it actually work if I was a patient and I kind of came in to use this thing?
Okay, I would say it's very futuristic, as I said, but there were of course the use cases we could think of. I think the most important one is actually the area of some mental support. So and this is not, this was not actually our use case, but this is something which I can actually came up with currently. So if you have a virtual therapist who can really help you with some support, you actually would like to have this type of emotional recognition. But again, this is to me something really, really sounds like a future. What we think is rather really a gateway between the HCP, so the healthcare professional as a patient. So with this emotion recognition, it's rather something which really allowed build patient connection actually, and being more willing to use the technology here on one hand. And actually this was the most important use case from our side. I want to make also clear that if we think about recognition as emotion recognition, this is really very tricky area. And we really want to make sure that this is transparent and that everyone understands what does it mean. So to me, if I were, somehow using a digital human or whichever other technology which somehow recognize my emotion and trying to sell something to me, I wouldn't consider this as an ethical. But if we really think about why it could be helpful in a healthcare, so I don't know, in the future, for example, if we can properly somehow recognize emotions with patients who are using digital humans or other conversational AI technologies or AI technologies, being able to actually recognize those emotions, and somehow doctors could benefit really on early stage, recognize some deviation during the treatment, especially during the chronic diseases, I could imagine that would be really of help. Super, but it's a really tiny eyes, I would say, if we going to emotion recognition. And even I think last week I've read in this so European Union work on this AI Act, and I think Germany actually now is really trying to ban the emotional recognition in terms of the usage, because of course it, and the idea is, how use this technology advancement to really support it. I could give you another example more from how it can help doctors to be trained to actually
Hmm.
speak with patients better,
Yeah, yeah.
because we are very often complaining that we don't have enough empathy from doctors when they have some information for us which might not be good always. So actually, I could imagine the doctors could speak to digital humans and see the reactions and see the reaction back and actually be trained in a way how to communicate properly and
Mm.
how to see which impact they can do and they could do for people. Actually, this is another
Yeah.
interesting use case.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there's agent assist technologies out there at the moment which do something similar in terms of helping call center agents with training and stuff like that. And it'll do things like, if you're trying to, I don't know, cross sell someone on something, it'll be able to rank your emotion and then effectiveness of the cross sell and stuff like that. It all starts to get a bit real. I've just pulled up this thing here. I didn't see this from last week, but yeah, Germany positioned to dig heels in over EU's AI Act and biometric use. Uh, put in a potential block on AI tools such as emotion recognition from being used, polygraphs and emotion recognition, and lobby to prohibit AI systems from monitoring employee performance. So that's basically what I was kind of getting at, is that these agent assist tools. If you can hear Winston downstairs, Gemma's just on her way in, so Winston's gone crazy. These agent assist tools, although they can be really helpful, and they can help agents with training, for example. So if you could just get on the phone and it will prompt you in terms of what to say, and it'll even automate certain sort of use cases for you. And so it can help you, but at the same time, it's monitoring your performance, it's monitoring the way you're talking potentially in future, it's monitoring like how effective you are at cross selling versus your peers and stuff like that. And so it's I mean, contact centers try and do this anyway, but a lot of it's manual right now. So this technology basically just kind of aggregates all of this data from all of these employees, um, and kind of it means that there's no stone left unturned, basically. And then if you think about in a healthcare setting, you've got someone who is probably sometimes maybe vulnerable, maybe they're not very confident, don't really want to talk to a doctor or nurse about something in particular, um, and then all of a sudden there's a camera pointing at them, which is not just recognizing what they're saying and logging that and sending that for analysis. It's also looking at the way that they're looking. There's a camera, there's audio, there's quite a lot of data that can be gleaned from that interaction, and there's more that can be gleaned from speech as well. Like canary speech and others who can, recognize COVID from a cough and Parkinson's with 3 minutes worth of audio. So there's a whole load of opportunity and potential is one way of looking at it with this technology, because it is super impressive when it works. But the other area is that it can be quite dicey, dangerous territory, because how do you be transparent about this stuff without sitting there and explaining to someone for 15 minutes? These are all of the technologies at play here when you talk to this thing. It's quite a tricky situation, isn't it?
It is tricky, but I think if we really want to use it, we need to make sure that this is really as transparent as possible and really as ethical as possible. And to me, this is actually a key point, which I have, in my mind. Whatever we want to do, there is really a need to educate, evangelize, and think, where it can be used, how it can be used, and what's the impact, because eventually it can really help a lot, but it requires lots of data. And even if you try to be really, really transparent, it doesn't mean that everyone is understanding this. So that's really important. And to me, it's a really very hard and difficult point now. But I'm also very much motivated to see, how we can overcome this. But and I can imagine, all these acts around it are very important, and we really need to avoid as much as possible misusing it, just to not create also not the right picture around what can be done. So I think also last week it was Coco. I'm not sure if you heard about it. So that was a tweet from the Coco owner. Coco is a company who is supporting a mental health from teens and adults via chats like Discord or Telegram. And what they did, they actually trained a GPT-3 model behind, but they
Hmm.
didn't actually make transparent that the people are talking to machine. People
Right.
were really sure that they have a discussion around their mental health with a person. It was like 4,000 people. And I am totally against it because to me it really ruins all the effort which we might have around, the transparency and the ethical use of it. Although they learn interesting things, but again, this is really not the case, and we should not actually act like this.
Mm. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that here. 4,000 people got responses, partly written by AI. It's interesting. The transparency question and ethics question is a very good one. We met at the conference, didn't we, last year? The Was it the Rework conference? Were you at the Rework conference in
Yeah.
London? That was it, wasn't it? Yeah. And there was a really good discussion on ethics there, and that kind of takeaway from that is that we're miles away from solving it because there was lots of good questions, but there was no sort of concrete answers. And although that there is a lot of, and quite rightly, kind of talk and awareness in the AI community about ethics, it's almost like the practicalities of taking those values and being transparent and putting that into an actual solution, there is conflict there between doing that, and which is the right thing to do, and also the usability and usefulness of the tool. Like, for example, I won't mention which platform it was, but there is a voice assistant platform, one of the ones, and I know a company who was working on a healthcare based application, and in order for it to be published, the feedback was that you have to absolutely have a statement before anybody interacts with this thing that says these things, which is it needs to tell you what data it's collecting, where the data is stored, how it's being used, all this kind of stuff. And it turns out that that statement was so long that no one was actually going to use the app because it was going to take you a minute and a half just to listen to all of the T's and C's. And so it's kind of like, for me, there needs to be sort of, I don't know what the solution is, and this is probably symptomatic of the stage of maturity that I think we're at from an ethics and transparency point of view with AI. But it seems to me as though there needs to be something that educates the user about those kind of things. This is what it's doing. This is how it works. This is where the data is going. This is how we use it. But this is the benefit that it'll bring. But how do you do that from a practical standpoint without diluting or kind of in effect making the application unusable?
So I wish I could answer this question either,
What, you mean you don't
because
have an answer?
actually, well, surprisingly, but actually
Okay.
we end up with the same situation, also trying to not really to be transparent with one of our experiment around the voice, so multimodal assistant. So we even created a video before, so people need to actually see those video. We are still kind of experimenting, so it's like a pool of some limited number of person included, and they did that. But when we ask questions about the data, about the transparency, it seems that somehow either it was ignored or they didn't understand it. But this is really super important thing. So I mean, to me, now we have ChatGPT, right? So the more we can make transparency in mainstreams wherever it's happening. Even today I was listening to the radio and they were speaking about it, like I was like, wow, surprised, right?
Mhm.
So the more we can actually make it like more a public discussion from this good and bad points of view, because what my feeling is, we rather speak about this misused of it than like
Mhm.
really what it brings from the positive angle.
Mhm.
Because if we think about all this advancement in medical field, like from the diagnosis part and recognition from your MRI and others, so it's really about this as well, right? So if we can bring more positive actually examples how it impacts our life, it could bring some good work as well for that, because I think we are much more vocal on this negative
Yeah.
one than the positive one. And this is a huge stuff. And I think now with ChatGPT, everyone speak about it, right? So it does somehow the work, but again, we need to bring more positive examples and try to think about value, how which it can bring to our life and to some advancements we are using on daily basis.
Mm. People will kind of. I don't want to. I was going to say sacrifice privacy in exchange for value, which I suppose is a bit of a brutal way of saying it, but that's kind of what it is. Which is people. Your mobile phone knows more about you than any one of your family members. It knows where you are, what you're doing, what you're searching for, what you listen to, who you call, who you message. There's so much data that you give up in exchange for that, but it's worth it because of the value that it provides you. Same thing with kind of like, you could use the example of a voice assistant. You're happy to give it the data in terms of your speech and stuff like that because of the value that it can provide you. Um, I suppose the question is when the consideration is when it starts doing things like turning on a camera, and some people even today, I was on a call today and 50% of the people on the call didn't have the cameras turned on, and it's like, you know, there's people who, for whatever reason, whether it's cultural, whether it's kind of apprehension or self consciousness or whatever it might be, don't like cameras, don't like cameras turned on. Where's the footage gonna go? All that kind of stuff. And so it's definitely a real kind of um, a real thing that needs to be sort of overcome. There's ways of doing it, I think. Even web browsers actually do a half decent job of being transparent. Maybe they could do a better job. But like if before we join this call, if you open up the web browser, it'll say this program wants to access your mic. Are you happy with that? You could build in a staged kind of onboarding process that's not like a 35-minute pre-read, but more of a staggered, staged, interactive onboarding process potentially. But I think there's some things that some people, I don't know, may not always be happy with in this area. But then again, are these solutions for everybody, or are they for the people who are kind of willing and able at this point?
Well, again, your questions are really really difficult. But actually, I had before our meeting today, I actually had this thought about enabling camera, and I don't have numbers there, but I can imagine like having actually a digital human, so kind of the conversational interface with a face and the body embodiment. It could actually more encourage people to actually open the camera because it's kind of the
Go on,
interaction.
go
Yeah.
on, turn it on, go on.
No, because I'm not sure if you interact with some of those digital human, but some actually can recognize your kind of how you behave slightly. So have you talked to Florence 2.0,
No.
WHO digital human? So please go to the WHO webpage or find the Florence 2.0. She can advise you how to quit tobacco. I don't think there is a sugar thing there, but maybe you can relate somehow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
She also provides information about the mental health and, of course, COVID-19 vaccination. So when you
Nice.
talk to Florence, she will slightly somehow respond for your behavior. So if you would show your teeth, for example, when smiling, she will also slightly smile. She will add some gestures from her hands as well. So then, asking also who can interact, people who are more techy or interested in those type of technology, they will enable camera. So she also asked about doing
Mm,
that because only then this interaction is kind of more responding again. So responding for some behaviors behind.
interesting.
So to
Yeah, I
me,
was be.
that actually could be encouraging. You have
Yeah,
someone in front of you who does not judge how you look,
yeah,
rather how you behave actually,
yeah.
and somehow respond for that.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I was being flippant there with that, but I think yeah, I can see that now. Yeah, who partners and like it looks like a Soul Machines.
I
It looks
think
very much
yes,
like a
yes,
Soul Machines.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
yeah, yeah. Interesting, interesting. Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, there's something. There's definitely something to that. There's definitely something to that. What was going back to the sort of project you were working on then? What were some of the sort of key learnings do you think that you took from that from a human to digital human interaction point of view? Do you think what were some of the sort of key learnings you got from it?
Maybe it will surprise you, maybe not. But our key learning is that now we should focus maybe not on the virtual embodiment, But if we think about really bringing the conversational interface, because again, this is our area of research around it, we really focus on a properly crafted content and conversation around this content, and actually focus on voice. Because voice, it's kind of perceived as easier in terms of connection. So this is our focus. Of course, we are experimenting and we are doing some additional project around digital humans, but not in the area of emotional recognition. So really like the conversational interface with the face. So
Yeah,
with the face.
nice.
So now we rather not continue. Of course, this is interesting topic. We learn a lot in terms of the technology, but this is still emerging thing from the technology ones. And if you ask legal, compliance, and ethical point, we as a world, we are not there to be used
Mm.
like this.
It's very interesting that because I've spoke to a number of companies who've either experimented with or deployed digital humans, and I think probably all of them don't have them anymore. So we had Rob Cunningham, who was innovation manager for LNER, on the podcast last year, talking about the experiment that they did at Newcastle rail station. And again, it was an experiment. It was part of the innovation department's initiative to figure out whether there's value here. But it didn't make it forward because of those reasons, partly those reasons you outlined. And not just the digital human itself, but in order to get a screen where in all of the places that it needs to be with a stable internet connection and all of that kind of stuff, it's very expensive to do that. um, and then you've also got the issue of, if you look at Serence or Soundhound and those companies that specialize in voice recognition in noisy environments, you'll know that in vehicles, for example, they have very specific microphones. They've got beamforming microphones, and you've got companies like Yobi who could do a lot of pre-processing on the audio so that when you hand it to the speech recognition system, you're getting clean signals. So, but when you go to deploy something in a physical environment, most of the time people are just using laptops or they're using tablets rather, and it's like the mics are absolutely terrible. There's no beamforming, there's no pre-processing. The equipment is terrible. So it's not even just the software that may not be quite sort of ready. The hardware is a kind of big inhibitor. But it's interesting how you say that because it's just that I've just realised that there's a lot of companies I've spoke to recently who've experimented with digital humans and haven't kind of pushed it on for some reason. So it must not be quite ready for prime time.
And if you speak about hardware, it's not only about digital human, as you mentioned, it's voice, right? So if you design it, I mean, I am super much interested in the voice itself. I feel it's really enabler from the accessibility perspective as well. But on the other hand, it really has accessibility problems itself now, right? Because now being a global company, we don't want to exclude. We want to include, which means if we want to onboard more people, we need to speak more languages and not only from text perspective. And if you want to really advance voice technologies, which might be in some actually supporting some diseases, actually it should be a case because there is no other way for patients to communicate with the conversational assistant actually, then voice is a barrier in terms of is the language somehow supported, is the specific area of this language, so specific accents actually, is it supported by other devices, right? So how you bring it to people, right? um, what type of apps you should build, and if you build it for voice, actually this is also very much hardware specific, I must admit. So even it's nice to have this experiment because we really learn lots of things which we can actually apply with bots, with bots. um, Still digital humans, and especially thinking about this recognition, this is really a future if actually, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the core sort of brain of it all, without which the digital human would be useless, is the conversational component. You know, a digital human without the well, the conversational AI without the digital human is still able to have the conversation, but the digital human without the conversational AI is just a picture. And so,
Totally.
and I would argue that the conversational AI technology is definitely ready for prime time. It's been deployed in loads of different environments, both voice and chat, and particularly voice. If you look at in car, out of the home, on mobile, in headphones, it's getting to the point where it's pretty much able to be deployed anywhere technically, obviously costs aside. But so I think it's probably a good shout to be focusing on the conversational aspect, focusing on the voice aspect. And although it's not accessible to everyone, it's accessible to a lot. Yeah, working within the constraints of things like accents and languages and stuff.
But you still think about multimodality, trying to get the best from what we can, and also build further. So if I think about enabling the voice or text assistant to patients, we can still learn, we meaning the healthcare area, what actually people ask for what they ask for, because this is not like known knowledge. If you think even about the conversational AI, uh, the current applicability in healthcare area, not in this, I don't know, transactional area, building the booking the visitor and so on, or some Q&A, simple Q&A on maybe interviews, as I mentioned, this discharge patient. This is also an area which is not super covered by conversational interfaces, actually. And this is what we learn, and this is what we want to more explore from that perspective. So not to even go that far, but really to understand how this can really, our idea is kind of support the discussion between doctor and the patient. It's not to exclude doctor, just to be really fair about it, and just to say it's not about making a diagnosis. No, it's about non-diagnostic stuff. It's really about facilitate this discussion and really help each other. And it seems this is really the area when it can be applicable. So, not even go so far, but really stay in that area. I see a lot of challenges already which needs to be overcome. But there it seems the technology, software, hardware can be somehow already implemented in the specific areas.
Definitely, definitely. And the good point is a good point about the data stuff as well, and learning things that you wouldn't have known otherwise. Like that Sergeant Star example, most enterprises that have conversational AI, some of them actually, some of the main benefits is the analytics. Comwave Telco in Canada was able to reduce the reasons that people have for calling its contact center by 30%, simply just by seeing what it is that people are actually calling about and then going and doing something about it, preventing the call in the first place. And as we've mentioned already, there's certain things that people will talk to an assistant about that they won't talk to a person about. So there's a lot left on the table, basically. And if you're able to, this is a bit more of a futuristic kind of thing, but if a healthcare practice has a digital assistant alongside all of the doctors, or even like a pre-conversation with the patient before they arrive, all of that data aggregated and rolled up at a kind of a kind of company level would give you insights into actually lots and lots of people have this issue in the last 3 weeks, or actually there's a cold, or there's a flu breakout, or there's something here. You're able to do a lot more analysis around the general health of the population, which then can help you inform things like policy, medication, supplies, and all this kind of stuff. So the data could be one of the most valuable parts of it all.
All is about data, actually, so
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Yeah, but it's really also bringing more to the patients. I saw already some reactions, and I am super encouraged by this. So uh, even the information which supposed to be available in Dr. Google, usually, if you have diagnosis, very often of the first visit, you are really overwhelmed, especially, if we talk about chronic or very, very, or fatal diseases, actually. So if you only have a possibility to have really reliable information and somehow structure in a way that it does not overwhelm you, so you don't go to a one, web page when you have like all information available at first sight. So if you can somehow be provided with the information which is relevant to the specific moment you are actually in, to me, that would be really the game changer in support of the patient journey during the from beginning, from diagnosis to the treatment and maintenance of the disease, and
Mm.
really help healthcare professionals, because if they have a reliable source to somehow um, share with patients, right? This will be really something which really will help the society so much. But of course, I will be very much vocal with all the transparency and ethic behind. So why the data is used, uh, how they are stored, anonymous as much as possible, because only then we can do really the good job for whole, like the society around it.
Nice. Well, that was a good way to end, I think. Definitely. Paulina Lewandowska, thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been amazing.
Likewise, thank you so much for the invitation, and see you in Edinburgh. I'll be there also
Yes.
speaking about this conversational AI supporting patient journey.
Perfect. I look forward to seeing you there. And I look forward to seeing you there if you're tuning into this live or on the replay. Edinburgh Chatbot and Conversational AI Summit in Edinburgh on the 15th and 16th of March. Join me and Paulina there. VUX World is going to be running a track on the second day all about enterprise transformation using conversational AI. It's going to be absolutely amazing. I'll put the promo codes in the show notes and on the website, and I'll also be sending a bunch of emails out. So if you haven't subscribed at vux.world/subscribe, do so. If you're not following me on LinkedIn, also do so and subscribe to the newsletter there if you can't be bothered having emails firing up your inbox. Thank you again so much. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we'll see you very soon. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.